you want to be fair, but you still, it's in the business, have the mindset that you're trying to make some money on the house, right? And also understand that whatever your initial estimate is, probably go up somewhat. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples. This is scenario number one. So this is the before house. This is the after house, right? This one is one that I did with Lee and Diana. Bought using the monster system. They found it that way. This was a straight purchase. We just bought the house, fixed it up, and then resold it. In this particular scenario, I think we didn't even pay cash. We took the property subject to and fixed it up and then resold it. And so there's some other pictures for you guys to see. So you can see this here was here. And we just kind of, again, I mentioned socially centric type homes, right? So we added a built-in barbecue, outdoor space, things along those lines, because it's one of those things that just doesn't cost a lot of money, but at the same time, it makes it feel like there's extra square footage, especially in Southern California where our weather is so favorable.
Could you explain, could you go through how that conversation went with the seller for the subject to how you sold that?
So we were offering them $395 for this house, and they wanted for like 20, I think. We ended up at $418 with them because they wanted to net a certain amount. And we used our vendors for all the closing because we can get the closing. We paid for their closing costs, so they just netted their amount that they were looking for. We said in order for us to do that, we can pay you more money, but part of what cost is our cost of funds and the yield that we're trying to hit. So even if we pay cash for it, we assess a yield that we would need to make on that money. Otherwise, you have passive income that I could just lend out the money and make 10% with no work product and just a lower loan to value with less risk. So we assess a cost of funds for whatever those are. If they leave their loan in place, that loan is at 4.5%. So because that offset for debt service, I can often pay more. So it makes it easy. Now, the reality is that sometimes when you do that, if they have a lot of equity, then it turns the scale the other way, right? Because now I've got a lot more cash in the deal. And if we leverage it, it may be, the yield may have been higher. But the way the conversation in that scenario went was, okay, well, here's what we can offer the cash price. Here's the price if and they were in foreclosure, right? And so, we'll bring it current, we'll give you the cash out, we'll leave the loan on, and the loan will be paid off, when we resell the house.
And do you have any paperwork, like, outside of that, subject to paperwork?
Sure.
I mean, how?
The purchase contract.
Yeah.
The purchase contract, you can use there's all kinds of, standard ones that are on the internet. You can, First Tuesday, I think, has one. It's basically, I think even Carr has one that is the equity purchase contract is what you're looking for. So you're not looking for a regular real estate purchase contract, you're looking for an equity purchase contract. Make sure it's just like the Carr one, right? It has the 5-day right to rescind, because if they're in foreclosure, you've got to have that. You should also know that 5 days means 7 days. It doesn't actually mean 5, because you can't count the day you sign and you can't count a Sunday. So you're almost always 7 days anyhow. So
when you buy a home subject to, do you give them all the money up front, or do you wait for some of the money to be in the back end?
No. So in this case here, if we're buying it from them, we give them all their money up front. They're done. They're out of the transaction's over, right? If we partner with them, where they're getting some of the equity, they might get some of the money now and then some of the money in the back end.
And what kind of percentage do you give?
I'll go into that. Great question, but I'm going to go into that. Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. So these are some of the houses that we did, right? Or this particular house. This here, it's hard to tell here, but you see how this looks orange or black? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's actually a white ceiling, and that is just tar from the smoke. So just smell that for a second, right? Yeah, and so, scraped all that off, cleaned it up. Really, the benefit for this house, there was no structural changes. There was no, we didn't have to change the floor plan. It all flowed really well. And I, we did some other things. I mentioned socially centric. This seems to be our signature now for some reason. Is we've been dropping these motorized movie screens almost everywhere. And one of the reasons is that it gives a big wow factor for not a lot of cost. And the other thing is that we really do try to figure out a way that they can embody that house and see themselves living there with their family entertained. So when they walk through the open house, I know that we've done a good job when the open house not just gets a lot of people through, but that they don't want to leave. And it's like a party. Because people sit there and they start to envision themselves like, oh yeah, this is great. You know, it's funny, we had in this house, so you can barely see it, there's a swing here that we did on this big tree. And the agent that was there with this house, he said, I've never been into an open house where the kids are crying because they have to leave. And one of the other comments that, I think maybe it was Diana that said this. She said, one of the kids had asked, the parents was like, why are there so many people here? And the dad looked at her, he goes, because we have to pay full price. And the buyer ended up paying more than full price, but it was just, you try to create that environment, right? Where people can see themselves kind of living there a little bit more. There's a trend right now in houses in that more blue-collar area that is not just this lifestyle, but it's also how can the house help you earn money, right? And I haven't done a lot of those houses yet, but friends who are in the business, they have kind of a warehouse setup that they can pull down in the garage like a workshop. But it's because people can earn extra money on Amazon or shipping or dropping and things along those lines. So they started creating that into some of these homes, in some of the areas that are a little bit more, savvy to that.
Do you have additional marketing tools as well that we might be able to use?
Yeah, so I do so some of the marketing side that we do is once you have the house. Let's say we bought a house together. One of the ways that we get a lot of people through is we spend some money on both PPC and Facebook marketing and everything to target the buyers in that area, right? We'll also buy the Z buyer leads and just make sure that you get all of the leads that come through so that you can have this ancillary income from doing these transactions. So keep in mind, you get a listing, right? You get the buyers, it's fantastic, right? But if it's also your house, you get the buyers, you get to meet more neighbors, you're there more often because the project takes an extended period of time. You really do get to create that rapport and that bond with other people in that neighborhood, which is, you're trying to work a farm area. It's better than just door knocking and, hey, I'm your local realtor, whatever you need, they get to see you as one of the members of that community. And they all like you because you're taking the crappiest house in the neighborhood generally and making it the best one. And when you sell it, they're like, oh wow, you sold it really high. They kind of connect the dots with you, and if they sell, that you can sell high as well. So I know that we had several neighbors to come through here. They're like, hey, listen, I'm considering what would you do to the house, and they asked those questions. So now you've got a different intro that you might have to get more listings to add to your list of expertise.
On that property, what would we have cost in the final sales?
That is a great question, and I have that coming up. So this is, this is the before after kind of, these are the numbers of the house. This is the before numbers of the house, right? So bought it for $418,000. We estimated at the time of buying it $55,000. We thought we'd sell it for $580,000. During the rehab, while we were going through it, and during the time where we were just kind of waiting for permits and what have you, what we noticed is that the market was going up. And so we increased the cost and increased, because originally we weren't going to, if you look at let me go back here for a second. Okay, so if you look at the kitchen cabinets, they're already that shaker style. They were filthy, but they could have been painted. We could have just changed the countertops and the appliances, and they would have looked okay, right? But we started seeing that, okay, we're 1 block away from Brea. This one was in La Habra. We're 1 block away from Brea. Brea was selling for $50,000 more, right, for this light product. And we thought, all right, well, let's gamble a little bit. Let's experiment, and let's overdo the rehab and see if we can't pull a Brea buyer into La Habra. And then the other challenge is the appraisal, right? So we're fortunate in that this house had this room, right? This is a sunroom. The unique thing about this house is that, and you should know this when you're looking at homes, is that always, 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 always go and pull the permit history. Because what you think is just an enclosed patio was actually permitted with a certificate of occupancy, which means you're not counted as living area, right? Because even though it was still because they gave that, which is unique, because they don't usually give that for enclosed patios. Usually it's just an enclosed patio. They gave us there was a standing certificate of occupancy already. So now that increased my square footage without having to do an attic, right? Increased the value. So we wanted to offset the fact that, it's not really a room, right? It's still an enclosed patio, right? And we wanted to offset that, but pick up that extra square footage and make it okay by giving them, professional appliances, a much nicer kitchen that the neighborhood might warrant. So we spent an extra, in this case here, we spent an extra, it was cumulative 30. I'm going to say 15 of it were things that came up with the house that were unforeseen. And the other 20 were additional upgrades, finishing everything up. However, versus the 580, we picked up an extra 75,000 in value. So we put out an extra 30, but made an extra 75. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So again, looking at the things that we've got. Next one is looking at it from the agent's perspective, right? As a pure listing here, 50-50, they would have got the listing because the feeling I got was they really didn't want people going through the neighbors. This particular house, all of the neighbors had security cameras pointed at this house. So when they moved out, they loved us because it was the bad element that was stealing their car batteries. Right? I think I was there once, and one of the meetings with the owner was.
Was that a yes to me?
That was a yes to you. Yeah. And one of the owners was sitting there with us, and she finds like a quarter, and she's like, "Ooh, 25 cents closer to pot." Give you an idea, and she's there. It was the druggie house, right? They were looking for ways, so they were stealing batteries, they were stealing whatever it was. So hence, all the other houses, they're like, "Oh yeah, we've got your house covered. Just so you know, they've got cameras, and they all look at your place." I'm like, great, but that's free security for me. But from a listing agent perspective, had they listed the house, the commission was $10,450, right? They ended up making it, and I meant to pull the actual file, but I thought it was $37,000 or something like that. Do you remember, Lee? Lee, do you remember what you got on this house? No? All right, 37. I'm going to say it was 37, but.
He's got his marinated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Just typing.
Roscoe? 37? Is that what the net was for you guys?
So what?
Is that what the net was? 37,000?
Oh, the net was 36.5.
All right, there you
just
go.
a shade under 37.
Okay. So anyhow, is that better than 10,000?
My net. My net was
Yes.
her. Diana's was 36. She's listening. She'll enjoy that.
Well, you've been married before. That's the way it works, right? So anyhow, solidified a scenario that was 50-50 to get a listing or not, right? Because they were looking for the most dollar out, which meant they would also negotiate with you on your commissions, right? So in this case here, closed the deal, never hit the market, and they made more money. Next scenario, that we went over. All right, is partnering with the seller. So this is the one that he spoke about earlier, which is Lana. Diana came to me and she said, "Listen, this lady's going to end up with almost no money if we just put it on the market and we sell it to like an investor. What can you pay for it?" So we ended up paying $413 was the basis, and she's getting half of the profits. And the way we structured this deal is to make it worthwhile for Diana and I. And was that part of the expenses are the commissions, right? So the commissions stay in the deal. That's the agent's investment into the transaction. There was no commissions paid up front or charged up front to the deal because it was a tight deal to begin with. She wanted to help. I don't know how old Lana is, but she's elderly. This is basically, she was in foreclosure, and she was going to either end up with, at best, $5,000 or $7,000 if it was a straight sale as is. House was not financeable. Hard to tell here in this picture here, it's a little dark. This here is the covered patio that collapsed. Oh. Right? We had, I think, 10 containers worth of just junk that came out of this house. Right? This is how we bought the house. We couldn't even see, but this concrete was all existing, but it was under this many leaves that had just fallen from all of these trees. So didn't even know there was a walkway that went around. Didn't know any of that stuff until they kept cleaning ice. And I told the guys, I said, just clean until you hit like the dirt, because we got to get down, because otherwise you just got elevated. Anyhow, before after. So here you got a better shot of that patio, right? And